Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the founder of the Kings Beat. Joining me, Mr. Sean Cunningham from Fox 40. What's going on, Sean?
What's up, James? Little down. Not no live chat today. This is
No?
I gotta listen to you guys the entire time.
No live chat. No, that's
live
very
chat.
true. Maybe you should just have like scrolling Twitter on the right.
Oh, maybe I could do that.
And along with Sean Cunningham, of course, we have Mr. Brenden Nunes from the Kings Herald and the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, what's going on?
Not too much, guys. Back in action. Did my homework. And in my scrollings of Twitter, also movie-related, apparently there's a Winnie the Pooh horror movie coming
it looks
out.
trash,
by the way.
What the?
Yeah. I grew up
I can
on
already
Winnie the
tell
Pooh.
you, it's Piglet. Piglet did it. I don't even need to see it. Like Piglets.
I don't know. Tigger's pretty
Tigger, man.
suspect.
He's too
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah.
No, it's always going to be Piglet.
Oh, Eeyore
Piglet.
gets killed for sure, huh?
Yeah, he does.
Think about this.
You leave Eeyore alone. Damn it.
And of course, they could go full. They could cook the bunny.
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal
Glenn
Attraction.
Close.
There we go. Glenn
That
Close.
was a
there we
movie
go.
in the 80s, Brendan. I suggest you watch that. Every man probably should watch that because there are some pretty psychotic relationships out there. So that's a good one to get into. By the way, Christopher Robin, always a little I don't know. And if I was his friend, I probably wouldn't have been.
You're not a Christopher Robin fan.
I wouldn't have been. Yeah.
Sean and I are in mourning this morning because the great Ray Liotta passed away this morning. He did not wake up from what we're hearing. He died in his sleep at age 67. So shout out to Ray Liotta. We were discussing before we came on the air that Brenden likely does not know who Ray Liotta is, but also just your favorite Ray Liotta film? What is that, Sean?
Yeah, the one so my favorite one is easily Goodfellas. I mean, that's just,
Of course.
But actually, I asked you, I said, what's the one movie you picture Ray Liotta in your mind's eye when, if someone mentions him? And for me, it's honestly not Goodfellas, even though it is my favorite. And to me, it's Unlawful Entry, which is just the creepiest role for him. He plays this cop who becomes obsessed with Kurt Russell's wife, Madeline Stowe. Unlawful Entry, crazy movie. He's really, really good in it.
Yeah.
I have seen Goodfellas, by the way.
Hey!
Within the last year,
Outstanding.
I saw it.
Okay.
What'd you think?
Yeah.
He goes,
It was
he goes,
good. I like
not for
mob.
me."
I like mob movies.
Okay.
They're intriguing to me. Yeah, I like. In general, I guess I'm like a true crime or some sort of villain focused movies. I guess kind of intrigue me. I'm really into Ozark right now. Just
Yeah,
like
that's brilliant.
similar-esque. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It was intriguing. It's long, and I may have. Yeah, no, I'm gonna
Jesus
guess it
Christ,
probably
man.
wasn't one. It probably wasn't
Force.
one sitting.
4 sittings.
At least.
That's
at
a 4
least.
sittinger.
Yeah.
Just lie to me. Just lie to me and tell me you don't do that anymore.
That's funny. That's funny. I've been watching The Offer, which is it's a made for TV docudrama basically on the making of The Godfather, which it's absolutely brilliant. I think it's really good. I think it's on Paramount. Anyway, that's one of those things. And I did have to I went to the movies last night and I had to go see the new Downton Abbey movie with my wife. But I'm being a good husband there. So anyway, yes, I loved Ray Liotta in Field of Dreams. He was Shoeless Joe Jackson and spectacular. Like it's a good film.
Except for the have a catch. That's just strange.
Yeah.
Have a catch?
Yeah, have a catch. No, you're right. That's true.
Just play catch.
Yeah. No, that's weird. I think maybe it's a different
Of
time,
all the
Sean.
things that are weird, that is not the voice in the cornfield telling him to build it and someone will show up.
No,
That's
true.
not so weird. That's fine.
All right, let's get into the podcast.
Let's.
Well, before we get into the podcast, we got to hit the news of the day, which is that tonight is Off the Record with the Kings Beat Virtual Happy Hour Part 6, The Voice, starring Gary Gerald. If you are a premium subscriber, you will receive a link to the festivities at around 3 p.m. This podcast will go up before then, because I'm just looking at editing wise when we're recording and everything. So I think that will be just absolutely tremendous. I'm super excited to dig in deep with Gary Gerald and let him tell some of the amazing stories that he has over the course of his 36, 37 years as the voice of the Kings. Again, if you want to become a premium subscriber, you still got time, but you need to jump on quick. So go to thekingsbeat.com or anywhere, really. Just go to my bio. You'll find everything you need, or down below in the comments section, in the description. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. Those are big deals for us, and actually we're absolutely killing it, and it's been a lot of fun to watch the YouTube channel grow the way that it has. Audio files growing as well, but the YouTube channel has been nuts over the last couple of weeks, and that's fun to watch happen. I really like the Monday night live show. I think the live shows are cool. What do you guys think about doing a live show more often?
I enjoy it. I do think that the crowd would be quite significantly different from a 10 o'clock in the morning crowd to the 8 o'clock at night crowd. So I was very entertained by the live stream, and apparently I have a stalker. So
is that DB?
The more I know about the said stalker, the more probably it'll help in having to tell proper authorities about them later on. So,
Brenden, did you see any of that?
Wasn't he also in the first one trying to get your attention?
Oh, it might have been. Yeah.
By the way, I think the little poem that he had. I don't know if that was
DB.
I don't know if that was a poem. It definitely wasn't a haiku. But if I am the only fan, or if Sean only has one fan, I am him, or whatever it was. That's actually a TikTok trend. Shout out Lindsay Polaris, my coworker at Fox, who let me know that that's a TikTok trend that hasn't made its way on my Instagram stories. That's how I keep up with a lot of the TikTok, is if someone sends me a TikTok, or it just ends up in Instagram stories. Did I call it the TikTok? And that's why
TikTok
you
is what really got me,
sorry
Sean. I'm not gonna lie.
I knew it exactly when I said it, I screwed that up.
I'm just wondering if
you made
Brenden,
a TikTok reference before I did. I don't know what is happening here.
Brenden, have you made that TikTok yet, where you say that about somebody?
No, I have not.
Good, because it's awkward.
Yeah, I'm gonna work on it though.
Yeah. We could just cut it and then put it right here into the podcast so people could see. We'll compare your video with Vivek Ranadive's dance video on TikTok and see which one. Oh boy,
it is so funny. That is such a funny video.
But is it meant to be funny?
But is it?
Yes.
All right, so we got the business side covered. Again, if you want to jump on board and become a premium subscriber, you'll get the invite to the happy hour tonight. The happy hours are amazing. They last about 2.5 hours. We break off at one point and just have people hop on and ask questions. And so you would get to ask questions of the great Gary Gerald, which, again, he's one of the greatest human beings ever. So I'm excited about that. Besides that, we're in the middle of the NBA playoffs, and are these like the most disappointing playoffs of all time? At this point, like, the Celtics Heat series is completely dictated by who has the most injuries that night, and then which team gets completely run over. And then, of course, Luka wins one, but that Warriors team just looks like they're rolling.
I think that Jaylen Brown in the second half was at least what caught my attention. And granted, I was having to watch a little bit with one eye on it, and I was over at the Sac Republic event last night because of having the MLS team in town and going up against that type of upper tier opposition. And they actually won. They shut them out 2-0. So shout out Sacramento. And by the way, sold out. I hadn't seen a sold out crowd over there since Nam. I mean, it's been that long. The championship season, maybe the year after. It's been a long, long time, but that was really impressive. But yeah, Jaylen Brown, man, that was a little unexpected, and I think just because of how that game sort of played out, I think there's a lot of panic around some of the Celtics after game 4. But yeah, by halftime it was a whole different Celtics type of team, and I still don't think this. I think Miami gets back in the series, but yeah, it hasn't been the most interesting. And to your point, James, like as I mentioned in the last podcast, I don't have a problem with any of these teams reaching this stage, but the games just haven't been there. And it is nice to see Luka at this stage, but I feel like even after they fell down 2-0, going back to Dallas, Jason Kidd kind of made the point of like, well, this is new for a lot of us, and almost making the excuse right away, like we're last year's Atlanta Hawks right now. And I'm like, no, don't do that. It's almost like waving the white flag. So at least they made it. They forced it to go back to San Francisco for tonight, and hopefully the game's entertaining. That's all I can say.
Yeah, game 3, even after that one, like Luka, some of the comments, I was surprised it was, had the same sort of tone that I think that you were talking about. I'm like, they sound like they think they're done, which, 3-0, I get it a little bit, but also just surprised to be hearing it. And the Miami-Boston one, like before that game 5, every other game was a blowout in one way or another. And it wasn't the home team every time, so I guess there were some like unexpected blowouts, but it's enough that by the end of the game, like, what am I watching here? I will say the
trash.
first, they were pretty boring for the most part. Specifically, both of these series, outside of I think that game 5 for Boston Miami, I did kind of enjoy watching Moody and Kuminga almost have their little comeback moment at the end of that game. The Dallas ended up winning, but while the conference finals have been pretty boring, I thought round 1 and the conference semis were really entertaining. Specifically the conference semis. Like the Milwaukee-Boston series was really, really good. Phoenix-Dallas was really entertaining. Golden State-Memphis. Memphis's, both of their series were great. So while, I think this has been a little bit underwhelming, the conference finals, I think it was an okay playoffs beforehand, and the finals could certainly make up for it.
If these were movies, Brenden would have turned them off 15 minutes in.
Yeah, it's true.
It's possible. Well, no, because he does that with good movies, too. So
True.
Okay, that brings us to Tuesday Overreactions. Sean's favorite portion of the show.
Let's go.
I'm just watching these playoffs right now, and I don't see anyone even coming close to the Golden State Warriors. Am I wrong? My Tuesday Overreaction is even though it's Thursday, is that that like this is the Warriors championship to lose.
James, usually I balk at some of these. I think you actually nailed it because I didn't think this way until probably a week ago. Like after last Friday, when I think it was Friday when they went up 2-0 on Dallas and we're going back to Dallas. I literally had that thought because as much as I've been entertained by both Miami and Boston, and I think I even mentioned it last week, I've said this before, I still think there's another level that the Warriors can get to, which is just scary. But the way they're playing, the way they're closing out especially, I really just don't feel, especially considering how like you've seen teams try to physical them and kind of get into them a bit, as really every team tries to do, but it's just not working. It just has not worked. They've been able to fight through that. They've been able to overcome it. They've been able to rely on their experience, even though they're using a lot of guys that haven't reached this stage at all in their careers. You can have a different Jordan Poole one game to the next, and he's still impactful. Even if he's not scoring, his playmaking ability is fantastic. Otto Porter has meant so much to them, which is just crazy to say. The plus and minus, I'm not a plus minus guy, as you know, but the plus minus for Otto Porter for that team is incredible. When he's on the floor, it's huge, and when he's off, it's not very good, but yet they're still able to win and close out and still be their dominating self. So I think I'm on board with your overreaction there because I just cannot see any of these teams taking them down. That said, a series, and now you're going to be flying all the way across the country. I know Memphis is pretty close to all the way across the country. I know how much the Warriors did not want to make that trip for that final game if they had not closed out at home against Memphis and moved on to the Western Conference Finals like they did. So maybe that element adds a little something to it because it's usually easier to fly East Coast to West Coast than it is West Coast to East Coast. So I don't know, man. I think I tend to agree with that.
I think that it's a little bit closer in my mind than how I feel like you guys are presenting it. It depends a lot on who's healthy in Miami and Boston when they get out of that series. And I think there is a big aspect of Golden State probably closes it out tonight and gets a little bit of a rest advantage over Miami and Boston. But I think that both of those teams are phenomenal defenses that are going to be able to make it difficult on Golden State, specifically in the half court. They have the shot creation. Like, to me, I think that Boston is the better team. I think it would be interesting to see how Golden State defends all of the smart players that Boston is working with. And I think that it could make for a good matchup. I would still probably favor Golden State. But I think that it's a decent matchup. You know, I haven't loved Dallas's defense. I know that they were pretty good earlier in the year. I didn't think that they've been great in this series, and Steph is kind of back on being Steph. Like, he's pulling shots early in the game that sometimes they're not even falling, but you're like, okay, Steph is doing this right now. But Clay hasn't kind of been himself. I'm a little more questionable about, like, you know, what are you going to get from Poole or Wiggins each night? So I think I still would probably give the edge to Golden State, but I think it'll be pretty close. I think the defenses are pretty solid on the other side. And, you know, maybe it's a little bit of my previous Celtics fan coming out, but, like, the route they've gone through in the East is pretty impressive. Like, sweeping Brooklyn, beating the defending champs in Milwaukee. Now they're playing Miami in a close series, and then going through Golden State. Like, I don't know. I think it would be a pretty good series.
I would have Warriors in 5 if I wanted to make money. As a safe bet, I'd say Warriors in 6. But, like, for a championship, I think it's going to be that lopsided.
Well, and especially, I would imagine you guys are counting out Miami at this point.
And not totally. I mean, you never know. I don't think it matters.
Like, I kind of wonder. I kind of wonder if you should, because I mean, there's the last 2 games, they've just been awful. I mean, you're talking 82 points in both those last 2 games. I know, you know, that's not necessarily. They really. I mean, they need everybody. I mean, they've had a lot of banged up guys. We were talking about. I think James, you and I were talking about what they were going into in their Monday game. And it was half their roster was like on the injured report, you know. And I know Jimmy Butler got all the attention, but you're talking Bam, Strus, Gabe Vincent. I mean, Kyle Lowry, who's finally back. Like, it doesn't look great.
Did you see that? The last 2 games, like, their starting backcourt is like a combined 1 for 28 or something?
Yeah, they didn't have, in fact, I was just looking at Mondays. So this is the game 4 game. You're talking 18 points among your starters. You have 5 players and 18 points. It was PJ Tucker, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, Max Strus. And you ended up with 80. No, that's direct.
Not good, Sean.
No. Yeah. That's not a recipe for winning basketball.
That's not ideal.
And you know, you only scored 82 points, and then of course you fast forward to what happened last night, and it's just another 80-point game. I wouldn't count them out because they're so, you know, that team is just so deadly, and I love the way they're coached. I don't want to count out an Eric Spoelstra type team, but you kind of wonder after that second half with Boston if they're just going to go into cruise control. So yeah, I think it's natural for us to look at Boston for sure, but you know how Miami is, and it's hard to count them out. But then again, it's hard not to after 2 back-to-back 80-point performances. That's just pretty awful.
Yeah. It is pretty awful.
Shout out Gabe Vincent, by the way.
Yeah,
on Stockton for a while. Isn't he the one in the Vlade picture where Vlade's showing his big board? I think he is.
I don't remember.
You mean like he is the one signing the contract?
Yeah.
Might be. Send it to me. I'll
not.
Confirm it.
Yeah, it's the Vladfather picture.
Yeah.
The
Vlad
has
father.
He has the Vladfather printed out. I'd have to look that up. That's a good question, Brendan. I was thinking it was someone else, but maybe I'm crazy. Okay.
Oh, you're crazy, all right.
Yeah, let's get to a couple other things. First up, I want to clarify something. I've talked about this a couple of times, that like there is a rumor out there that the Kings are ready to move up to number 2 with a swap with the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's a rumor. It's a rumor that may or may not prove out, but it's definitely a rumor that I've heard. And then I also made the other claim that that when the combine is one of those places where every general manager, every assistant general manager, everyone and their dog is there hanging out, and it's all in one hotel area. It's all in one facility and all that stuff. So a lot of the business of basketball actually happens there. It's done long before we get to draft night and long before we get to free agency. There's agents there. There are players that are hiding out there, but there's definitely like all of the front offices are there. So if in fact the Kings were to move up to number 2, it is very possible that a deal has already been struck, because that's kind of where you would do something like that. Now look, that may not happen, and it is a rumor that I've heard. And at the end of the day, like I don't know where the Kings are going to draft or not. But if they were going to move up, it probably already has, like the advanced conversations have already had. There may have been a handshake like deal in place, but we just don't know yet. So I'm going to leave that sort of like that. Like it's not a definitive, hey, the Kings have moved up and they're drafting number 2 and I know exactly what happened. That's not what's going on right now. But I would tell you that there's plenty of smoke there, and there's a lot of like intrigue that we can talk about. So I think it brings us to a conversation because Brenden wasn't here on Monday when we recorded the live show, and Brenden, Chet has been your guy. Like, and if they did move up to number 2, it was with the idea that Orlando is most likely taking Jabari Smith at number 1, and that Chet would be the guy on the board. We've also heard some rumors. I've heard some rumors that OKC might not be all that enamored with Chet Holmgren, that they do like Jaden Ivey, that he still could be on the board. An option at number 2, Jaden Ivey could. But why don't we start with Chet and Brenden? Like you've done a ton of like work on these things, on draft profiles and stuff. What is it that you like about Chet?
I think he's just the perfect, like, complementary big man. And complementary sounds almost like I'm downplaying him, but I don't think that he's like a primary offensive creator or anything like that. I think that he has so much value on the defensive end, with his length, his timing. I know there's reasonable concerns about his frame, but I think that there haven't been moments where I've seen him back down from physicality. I think he's very willing to kind of bang with guys down low. And I think we saw that in the tournament. He played against Jalen Duren, and I don't know that he had a phenomenal game on the offensive end or anything like that, but I think that you also saw him deal with getting posted up by a guy that is a genuine and high-level NBA athlete, with solid strength already at Duren's age. So I think that what you get on the defensive end, the rim protection to me, and the cerebralness in defending the pick and roll, and like nuance of covering a drop and just staying perfectly in between the guard and the big and being able to defend both guys at the same time. And then on the other end, to have an intriguing passing ability that's, I think, an above average for a big man, just under 2 assists per game, and he's certainly not the primary, anywhere close to the primary option in Gonzaga's offense. And then he shot 39% from 3. Like, I think you could be talking about a 40% three-point shooter that is like all defensive caliber, and with 7 feet. Like, I think to me he's exactly the type of guy you're looking to put alongside Sabonis. I think my question would be like, which one of them is defending the pick and roll? And it'd be hard for it not to be Chet, because like I said, I just think he's so freaking good at it. But then you're leaving Sabonis on the perimeter, which I don't feel amazing about, but it's also not horrible. So to me, I just think Chet is the ideal modern big man. Like either him or Sabonis could get the board and bring it up the court themselves. And I think they're both really smart with the ball. I think there is an aspect of like the idea of Chet being able to do even more than we saw is kind of intriguing to me, but I'm not betting on that. But I think there could be something there. Like Drew Timme was the guy on that team. And I think just the willingness to be able to go to that team, knowing that that was going to be the situation with it being the end of Timme's college career. So I just think it's a phenomenal fit alongside Sabonis with a great rim protector who also can shoot from three and pass the ball, and maybe you get even more.
Yeah, Sean, what are your concerns?
Well, I mean, the body for sure. I mean, he's got a skill set, and it's really it's a nice skill set. But I feel like from a development standpoint, this one's going to take some time to incubate. Like this one's going to take some time. And I know a lot of people I've heard them use the Kevin Durant comparison, which I don't really think is fair at all. I mean, you're talking Durant was a little over 6'10", 215 at the combine, and like,
But couldn't put up 185 on the bench press, right?
Right, that's the famous story. And then you've got Chet Holmgren, who's 7 foot legit, and like 195. Like that's especially. I do agree with what Brenden said about being the prototypical future NBA big. Like that's exactly what you want from a skill standpoint. But I feel like it's going to take him some time to get there. This notion that putting him with Sabonis, like I have a hard time, and I get it. Like if you're taking a number 2 pick, if you're taking him number 1 or number 2, like it's weird to think that this guy is gonna play right away for me. I think a lot of people would see a number 1, number 2 pick and think that this guy's got to play right away, and you begin that process. But with him, I think it's a little bit different. Like I couldn't fathom a situation, especially with a Mike Brown offense. And again, we don't know what that looks like yet, or defense, I should say. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I just wouldn't picture both of them being on the floor at the same time. If he's your stretch 4, that's nice, but you probably need another one. And I don't know. The two towers of Holmgren and Sabonis kind of leave me with some question marks more than anything. So I don't have a whole lot of confidence in it. But that's not why you draft a guy like that. You draft a guy like that because you think he's going to be the best player available and the best for your future, and you develop him. So any of those concerns about right away and stuff that I have, you throw out the window because you're strictly going with the guy that you think is going to be the biggest potential star out of the draft class later on. So if they can be patient and they've got some nice player developing, they're going to be leaning on that a lot. I mean, he's already got the skill set. The skill set is tremendous. I actually really love his ball handling for a 7-footer. Like that is scary. He does some really, really nice things, and he's aggressive and he wants to be great. You can tell that right away. I think a lot of people will look at what he did in the tournament, which wasn't much, and maybe get a little bit scared, especially considering how that a lot of times they try to translate that into what the NBA is. Probably not the most fair, but I think the basketball IQ is gonna be a work in progress. But you can see that there's something there. There's a lot to like with the guy. I just with way you're kind of already built, hopefully you're adding a piece that you can use right away. Maybe you can. The fit with him and Sabonis would be a big question.
I'm intrigued because, look, I think the biggest issue that we have is that, like, you think like a stiff breeze would like blow him off the court. Like we'd have to worry that like you couldn't open the windows at Golden One Center because Chet could get blown away and like end up in the Arden Fair area. But I don't see it. Like when he actually plays, he's physical, he's tough. Like I think that there's a toughness to him, especially on the defensive end, that I didn't expect. Like he is like the next level guy that, if it does work out, if you do get him in the right training program, you're going to have a difficult time ever putting weight on him. I mean, you can put 15 pounds on him probably, but like, can he get up to 230? I don't think so. I mean, and if he does, it's going to be when he's like 27, 28 years old. He's going to take a long time as far as like to gain weight, but I'm not sure that you need him to gain weight, especially if he's going to play more of a stretch 4 or a perimeter 4. And then the thing that I like about him, I'll be honest, like when the Kings pull Sabonis off the court, it just goes to hell in a handbasket. It's not good. Like as soon as you pulled Sabonis off the court, it was like, oh dear Lord. It's the same, horrific, like everyone's just running around the perimeter, like flicking it to each other. Like, here you go, here you go. There was no identity at all, especially once you made the trade and you gave up Tyrese Halliburton. When you had Halliburton, it was different. He was able to get guys into the pick and roll, to get guys like Rashawn Holmes involved. Once he was gone and Fox was gone, and then, again, like Sabonis, as soon as he stepped off the court, it was like, well, this is so boring and vanilla, and this will never translate to wins. So I actually like the idea of, starting them together and then having one of them duck off the court, but always having one of them on the court, because I think you can run an offense through Holmgren even early in his career, because he is smart, he does have passing skills, and he's huge. I mean, he's 7 foot tall, but like a monstrous wingspan. You have to defend him all over the court. You can't let him go. Like, you can't just ignore him. He can hit the three. He can probably score at all 3 levels, to be honest with you. And I think he can dribble. Now, is it all going to be perfect in year 1? No. But year 3, you might have a top 25 player. You might not. You don't know. And if you hit it right, you could have a top 10 player. You just don't know. And this is a guy who has been like a known entity for so long that I'm at least intrigued by him. I mean, he's been in all the big tournaments, and he's done a lot. He's played a lot of basketball for a kid who's, 19 years old and about to go into the league for the first time.
Yeah, one of the common concerns, and it's a 7'6" wingspan, I believe.
Yeah, that's
ridiculous. One of the things is
did you see Mark Williams posted as 7'6.5", but a 9'9" standing reach?
Yeah. Oh, Williams is crazy.
Go ahead.
If he could jump at all. One of the things I hear a lot is like, oh, well, how's he going to deal with getting posted up by some of these other guys? Like, that's what Domantas Sabonis is for. Like, that's one of the better aspects. I mean, the best aspects of Sabonis' defense is probably just his rebounding. But, like, I think we saw him, best you can, deal with, like, Jokic in the post and just dealing with kind of physical post-up players. So if you're like, who's going to defend post-ups? Like, that's the one aspect on the defensive end where I'm like, well, that's where you can just hand that off to Sabonis. And then if Sabonis needs help, what's better help defense than a guy who's a smart defender with 7'6" wingspan?
Yeah, and who block shots.
Yeah, and I think James also, I think a lot of people make this mistake. Not that you made a mistake, but because I agree with you, there was some clunkiness to what happened last year, especially when Sabonis was off the floor. But I think it's important to just point out to people that when they made that trade, it's why I kept saying playoffs be damned. It didn't really matter. Your team wasn't constructed at that point. Like, you've given away 6 players. You had a lot of imbalance in the force, if you will. Like, your roster imbalance was crazy at that point, but you did it because they wanted to bring in the talent of Domantas Sabonis, right? Yeah. So however that looked, push that to the side. Like, they have a whole offseason to build, and maybe Chet Holmgren is a part of that for sure. But putting him aside, like, that will look different by start of next season because they will have addressed certain holes and needs. And again, possibly they do that through the draft. But I don't want people to get hung up on that part. Be like, yeah, man, they were really awful, and they were, because there were moments there where it just didn't look good, especially with him off the floor. So,
I'd say this, Sean. Like, it's the same exact problem the Kings had early in the season as soon as Tyrese Halliburton stepped off the floor.
Correct. No playmaking.
No, it was like this whole thing screeched to a halt, and it looked like the same thing. It looked like 1950s basketball where one guy flips it and runs around the corner, and they flip it to him again. Like, it was just the same thing again and again and again. It was so incredibly repetitive and predictable, and it led to a whole bunch of bad 3-point shots. There was very little movement inside the 3-point line. And so, but it's something that we saw early in the season, every time that you saw Halliburton come off the floor. And there were times where, of course, Fox was penetrating and stuff, but especially when you saw Fox and Halliburton off the floor, it was just horrible, like horrible basketball to watch. And it was very, very vanilla. And that's something they've got to get away from. Clearly, we're going to see a whole different design.
And I think too, Brenden. You guys have been going through this for better part of 2 months now. If you were to ask me who the most intriguing prospect of the whole draft class is, it's Chet Holmgren and probably 2 others. Chet Holmgren to me is easily among the most unique players that are available. I don't know if he's got the highest ceiling, but he's definitely in the conversation. I just think he's such an intriguing prospect.
Yeah, and I don't know that I see like I wouldn't pick him thinking of like you're getting a top 15, 20 player possibly. Like I think again, like my elite role player almost sounds like I'm downplaying him, and that doesn't sound like beautiful with a number 2 pick or anything. But I think that's also what Jabari is. Maybe there is a potential that these guys are more, but I think more likely than not, they're elite role players. Like Paulo's the only one I look at and think this guy could be a number 1 option on offense. But what are you getting on the defensive end? Like I think Jabari and Chet are difference makers on the defensive end. So I think just like at the top, I don't know that you're getting somebody that I'm like, okay, just hand over the keys of the franchise to this guy instantly. But I think like elite role player is still something that like the Kings very desperately need. And if they believe that he fits and checks the boxes because they already have 2 guys that they can run their offense through, then I think it makes sense. Like you saw what Mobley and Jared Allen, those type of guys were able to do in Cleveland. I think that, again, I'm not betting on like superstar upside or anything like this. There's the potential for it if that handle is actually more than what he was able to show at Gonzaga specifically. But I just think that like elite role player sounds like I'm downplaying it, but I think there's so much value in those type of guys in the league.
I think it's funny too. As soon as you said that about Paolo, all of us kind of shook our heads. Like we all kind of believe that Paolo could be like probably the fanciest, the best raw number guy of the group. He's the guy that you could see like, okay, I could see 20 and 10.
Yep.
I could probably even see 25 and 10 or 25 and 8.
And 5. The passing is nice.
The passing's nice. I actually think he's a better passer than he is a rebounder, but just by sheer size, and again, if he is soft, he can still end up with easily 5 to 8 rebounds probably.
I watched him play at the Final Four, and like I was impressed with his defense. He's not a great perimeter defender, and he's not a shot blocker. But Baycott was running like roughshod over those guys, and everyone else kept fouling out. Like Mark Williams couldn't stay on the court. Like everyone just kept getting in trouble, and they put Paolo on him, and I thought he was really solid. He a little bit like the way that Sabonis is solid. Like Sabonis he's not the horrific defender that some people think that he is. He's not a guy who's going to like chase guys around the perimeter. And he's not a shot blocker, but he's a great position defender. He's always in the way. And I think that Paolo has an opportunity to at least be that. And I think he's probably going to average over 20 points a game multiple times in his career. I do think he's going to be like a high scorer. But I think it's funny, like we've had major conversations on Chet. We've had major conversations about Paolo and about Jabari. Shaedon Sharpe is like this mystical beast that, Kenny Caraway is already priming for a tattoo of. Keegan Murray is a guy that we've covered again and again and again. Like, who is Keegan Murray? Who, to be honest with you, he might be the next Harrison Barnes. But the one guy who's probably the highest likelihood of the Kings selecting, if they do actually stay in and choose at number 4, is Ivey. and we just seem to skip over him way too often. What is it? I think it's partially because everyone goes, I don't know how he'll fit with Fox, but that's not what you do at number 4. At number 4, you choose the best potential player, right?
I think a lot of times people look at it, especially with Kings fans, and they look at the draft in terms of what does the team need rather than who could be the best player available. And with Ivey, what makes me just really, really intrigued is the speed in the backcourt. I think even though he's not a point guard, it's that combo guard. He has a playmaking ability. He has a really high IQ, and maybe no mid-range game, and I think that's okay because Fox kind of makes up quite a bit of the mid-range game for him. But you always see the Donovan Mitchell comparison, and I think people hear Donovan Mitchell and they just go, "Oh man, Donovan Mitchell and Fox, like just like it was supposed to be, right?" So maybe it's a way for people who are really intrigued with Jaden Ivey to see what he did at Purdue. They had such a tremendous season there. And if they go back and watch, I really feel like if you watch full games of Jaden Ivey, there's a lot that stands out on tape. There's a lot that leaps off the page, and there's a lot to like. And with Shaedon Sharpe, it's a difference because they look at it and go, man, this guy is supposed to be this knockdown shooter. This supposed to be has a real high ceiling, but you don't know what it looked like in college. That's kind of almost by design in a way. And knowing that you really need a 2 guard or even a 3 with some size, depending upon how you want to play, he just fits a need right now. And I think people have to remember, like, Shaedon Sharpe is not probably going to be available right away. I mean, he's going to take some incubating, like I say. There's going to be a lot of development there. So Jaden Ivey can step on the court day one, contribute right away, and having who knows how the roster shakes out, but having the ability to have him, Fox, and Mitchell together would be very, very intriguing.
Yeah, I think the offensive fit is better than I think what a lot of people tend to think. I think kind of like Sean was just pointing out, like Ivey played 2 guard all year long. You know, it's not like I think it's easy to look at some of his highlights and just see like, oh, the guy needs the ball in his hands. And I get that a little bit. Like, I think that's when he's most effective, and he'll have his moments of taking over and just, I mean, he closes out a lot of games, and he just has these takeover stretches that is rare to see in a prospect. And a lot of what you're getting with him is just athleticism. It's elite athleticism. Maybe it's like a tier below De'Aaron Fox, but like not that far off. And it's mainly open court speed. There's a killer first step. He has nice moments of his handle. I think like that's the main thing that I think will need to be improved, so that way he can like fully utilize his speed rather than just moving quicker than the ball. And the 3-point shooting improved a lot. You know, he jumped up 10% from freshman year to sophomore year, from 25.8 to 35.8. Off the catch, he shot 52.2 adjusted field goal percentage. I think that he was a fine shooter there. It's a little like from his chest, but it goes in at an okay rate. I think that that's where the fit is a little bit questionable, because you can't have questionable shooters around Fox and Sabonis. You know, like we even saw it with Davion. There were times when Davion was out there, and it's like he's an okay 3-point shooter, but sometimes it just wasn't quite enough, and defenses are ignoring him out there, and like we're just going to take away Fox and Sabonis. So I think that that's where I guess I see some questions with the fit, but the playmaking that he has, like if Sabonis is getting a board and his 2 outlet options are Jaden Ivey and De'Aaron Fox, like pick your poison. So I think that it is intriguing. The talk is that he's very coachable as well, right? With his mom coming from his mom being the head coach of Notre Dame. She worked with Memphis for a long time. Apparently he really likes John Morant, and they've been around each other an okay amount with all the work that she did at Memphis. And you can see some of those moves. It's like not quite a crossover, but like a hesitation dribble in a way, going downhill that it looks like Ivey stole from Morant along with the haircut. So I think that the in-between game is a little bit of a concern, like Sean pointed out. There's not really much of a floater or a pull-up jumper in the in-between. and maybe that's why I'm like a little hesitant on that would need to be developed for him to be a primary option. If that's what you're talking about, but the potential is all there. I mean, if you get more growth from this type of athleticism, it's hard to not see it with Ivey.
Yeah, I would tell you this. I think he's actually a better athlete than De'Aaron Fox. Like, I've watched some dunks where, he beats a guy off the dribble, somebody cuts baseline to stop him, and he goes over the top of both of them and just hammers it down. I mean, the guy can absolutely fly. He reminds me, the way that he finishes above the rim in traffic really does remind me of Ja. Like, he's fearless, and there's always some concern about that. But I watched a ton of their games, and he played off the ball a lot. Again, people say, oh, he can't shoot. He shot 35.8%. John Morant shot 34.4% from three last year. Could Ivey shoot that at the pros? Yeah, he could shoot that at the pros. It may not be in year one, but year two, year three, you could probably get that out of him. And I think if the Kings do this right, where they're playing a lot of cuts and a lot of up-tempo offense, playing off of Sabonis a ton, if you had two De'Aaron Foxes, you'd be pretty dangerous. And so I'm intrigued by him. If he were the pick at number 4, I wouldn't have any problems with it. I think there's a lot of value still there at number 4 for the Kings to move off of that pick, but I still wouldn't have a problem with it because I think at least the brand of basketball would be exciting, right? We'd be watching this, like, two supreme athletes with, like, one of the smarter big men in the league playing off each other. And now you got to build out the rest of the roster, but at least you wouldn't have a lack of athleticism, which his team has had quite a few times. This is a guy who's gonna sell tickets. He's gonna make posters.
And the lateral quickness is incredible. I mean, lateral side-to-side movement. He never stops moving, which is in the college game. That's if you find a player who just can have that Rip Hamilton, Steph Curry, even ability to just weave through traffic, never stop moving. I mean, the guy probably runs 5 miles a game. Like that's right up there. And again, I like the fact they can both handle the ball. If you look at the intrigue with Fox, because the one thing, again, last year that I've harped on so much with the whole Tyrese Halliburton thing is they were still trying to figure it out. De'Aaron Fox was trying to figure out how to be effective without the ball in his hands. Tyrese is gone. He gets the ball back in his hands, and he's a much more effective, impactful player again. I think if you have the two of them together, obviously De'Aaron Fox will have the ball in his hands. And if you already see what Jaden Ivey does without the ball in his hands, with the way he moves, that just leaps off the page to me, and I think that would be very, very good.
Are we sure that Fox would have the ball in his hands?
I'm pretty sure he would.
Wouldn't
yeah. 100%.
I feel like I would have said the same thing with Tyrese, though.
No, different, because Tyrese's playmaking is elite. Jaden Ivey's playmaking is not elite. Yeah, so Tyrese leaps off the page when it comes to Fox. I mean, Tyrese is an elite. He sees things like in the Luka,
Chris Paul,
LeBron James,
Trae Young.
They see the play before it happens. The space. They have such an understanding of spacing.
Yeah.
Those two guys are a step below that, and that's what made Tyrese so special. Where you had to give him the ball. You saw in his rookie year where De'Aaron would be a primary ball handler, but that by his second year, it was even by the second part of his rookie season, it had already kind of waned off, because even though they weren't starting Tyrese Halliburton, they were bringing him off the bench. A lot of times they would share the floor together.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like, when I look at Ivey's playmaking and all that stuff, like, it reminds me a little bit of Fox's. Like, I think Fox is further ahead, of course, but still, that's what you're kind of hoping, that he can be a secondary guy to Fox. And when Fox steps off the floor, you still have a guy who can make plays. I think we talked about it early in the season. The team just didn't have any playmaking at all, especially even when you took Terrence Davis out of the equation, who could playmake for himself and for others a little bit. It still was so, like, evident that they had no playmaking. And you had guys like, Harrison Barnes, who the previous year had put up like a career high in assists, and then came right back down to, the 2 assists a game. And Buddy Hield had, again, put up a career high in assists, and all of a sudden he's averaging 2 assists a game. What you saw was, like, no playmaking at all. No one playing for each other. And that's where, again, like, having a coach's son having a guy with a high basketball IQ, incredible athleticism, like he checks a lot of boxes. Ivey does, and again, we talked about Paolo being the guy who's probably going to score the most. Ivey's probably the guy who would sell the most tickets. You're going to watch a couple of games of Ivey and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just saw that. And I think there are a couple of guys later in the draft, later in the top 10, that can bring some of that athleticism, but not really like Ivey does. I mean, he is going to be a highlight reel. And you brought up Donovan Mitchell. Like, people forget Donovan Mitchell was just a defensive player in college. He averaged like 12 points a game in college.
But he could also jump out of the gym.
Yeah, but no one expects him to do this. I mean, we've talked to Fox about him. Fox goes, man, I played with him in AAU. I've known Donovan forever. I never thought he would average 24, 25 a game. Like, that just wasn't him. That wasn't who he was. So we want to write off Ivey so quickly as a defender, but maybe he can be a good defender. Maybe he just needs the right coaches. Maybe he just needs the right scheme to help him figure it out and all that stuff. He's got the athleticism. He's got the lateral quickness. He's got the speed. So I don't know. I think, again, we judge so quickly on these athletes by 1 year at the college level, which is 30 games or less, and then try to extrapolate what that means at the NBA level. And very rarely do we hit it on the nose perfectly.
Yeah, Ivey is a high risk, high reward pick, but you have to take swings at the top. He has a chance to be the best player in the draft. Also, easy to forget, he played with the biggest player I've ever seen in my life, and they were playing through the post, and he's playing with two bigs sometimes out there. So what does the spacing look like, and how much is he able to get to the rim when he does have NBA spacing? But also, on the other side, how good of a passer is he? I feel like a lot of it was these dump-off passes that were pretty available to him because he's putting so much pressure on the rim. And then, does the three-point shot translate enough? Because it's kind of on the borderline there of you don't know which way that's going to go. And if he can't shoot from range, then how much is he able to do damage at the rim when he's also doesn't really have a mid-range game? The potential is there on defense with the lateral quickness, but also wasn't great this season. He had moments, but I think there were more flaws than standouts in a positive way on the defensive end. So definitely see all the potential, but I also understand why it's risky. I would still take him at 4 if it was the normal top 3 that we expect. But I mean, you're just betting on upside, and I think there's only so many times that an organization like the Orlando Magic, Oklahoma City Thunder, Sacramento Kings have a chance to get a star, and one of the main ways is the draft, and you can't just not take a swing at that. I feel like
one of the only ways is through the draft, and it's not even I'll just be honest. It doesn't just have to be the pick itself. The only way for them to get a star is to draft Tyrese Halliburton, have him be so much better than anyone thought, and be able to trade him for a star. The Kings can't sign a star. It's never happened. I mean, until it happens, I got to say it's not going to happen. We're 37 years into the franchise. The best free agent they've ever signed, ever, is Vlade Divac. There's no one even remotely close. I mean, we could start comparing stats with Rashawn Holmes and think, did they find one of the better players in their history with Rashawn Holmes as far as free agent signings? So you got to get this right one way or another. And even if it's finding a player that, that all of a sudden becomes something so much more, but allows you to use that player to go get something else, I mean, it's pretty much the only avenue they have.
And people need to know the difference too. Re-signing is not the same as signing.
No.
That is completely different. So people go, oh, they signed Chris Webber, Mike Bibby, DeMarcus Cousins gave an extension. No, you can't. It's re-signing is different than signing. Luring a star to willingly sign in Sacramento. That's what has been the Achilles heel for Sacramento, among other things.
Yeah, you can trade for players and get them to sign extensions. You cannot get them to sign as normal free agents. And the only time they do, they overpay for role players, and those role players almost every time bust out. They they're not. They took the money, and that was their motivation. And then they get here, and they don't want to be here.
Shout out Dwayne Dedman.
Oh God.
Marco Bellinelli, George
God.
Hill,
Trevor Ariza.
Yeah. There's quite a few of them. Yeah, I mean that's the problem, right? You need to find players that want to be there and that can actually grow. We talked about this a little bit on Monday, but Brenden, do you have anything on Luke? Is it Lauk?
I don't. Nigerian team with Mike Brown.
See, you did the homework that me and Sean did, which was not.
Yeah, I found his LinkedIn page.
See, and that's what I want to differentiate, because for people who are like, look, you can look at a guy's resume. Again, I've covered the NBA 20 years now. I don't know this guy. I mean, I have heard the name, but I don't know him. I don't know this guy. I don't have people that know him who've told me stuff about him in the past. You can look at a resume and go, oh yeah, Team Nigeria and been in the Warriors, Cleveland, whatever video room, doesn't matter. You try to use more intel than what a Wikipedia page says, and that's why I'm honest when I go, yeah, I haven't the foggiest. So
I got nada.
Yeah,
I got nothing.
Can't wait to learn. Can't wait to get to know the guy.
Yeah, but I'll also tell people, for some reason, this particular coaching search has been crazy for the amount of information. I think, Brenden, you asked at one point, is this coaching search different than any other? And I think the answer is yes. And it's not different because, the coaches are different. I think it's different because people like Jill Adge are going out there and, literally doing, advanced Google searches and pulling up everything. I'm assuming that Jill somewhere has, Mike Brown's, third grade class photo. Realistically, the amount of work that other people have done on some of these coaching candidates, because I'll go back to last year or the year before. If you guys think, if people out there who are watching this think that we should know about Luke, we don't know anything about Jonah Hurskew, and he's been on the staff for 2 years.
We
know a little bit.
Yeah.
We know a little bit, but not an advanced library on Jonah
I'll
Hurskew.
say this, if you're talking about just getting research done, that, first of all, coaching search, are you saying different coaching search for the media or for the organization, or
I
what do
think
you mean
the
when
way
you
that
say
this
it's
has been
different?
looked at, especially on social media, this coaching search has been
so
much more comprehensive than I think, even the way that we've handled it here on the pod. We would have, I don't remember us spending 5 or 6 hours on a coaching search in the past.
And by the way, nor should we, because it doesn't, the only difference is you've had a coach who can't do his press conference because he's still with another team going deep into the NBA playoffs, and now 1 game away from the finals. So it's still going to be mid-June until we see Mike Brown saddling up for his press conference, and days later they'll be either making the 4th pick or trading it. So it's an interesting situation. So it is different in that regard. And you don't have an official, outside of really one in Jordy Hernandez, you don't really have any others that have officially been named by the team. So it creates idle chatter and idle hands, here trying to figure out who's going to be there and what, and get these reports of who will be added to the staff, and it's very, very vague at the moment. So until it becomes official and certain things kind of play themselves out, it's unusual. It's kind of like when Jeff Petrie was assisting, his staff was assisting the transition from his staff to the Pete D'Alessandro camp in terms of general managers and doing their part during an active draft period where you're bringing workouts in and things like that. So I think that's probably the only real thing that's different. Everything else is just you're spending time because there's not much out there about your team, and there's a lot of speculation as to who's going to be part of Mike Brown's staff. And at the end of the day, most fans don't give a damn who's sitting next to Mike Brown as long as they win games.
I agree. Okay, so we've covered quite a few bases here. I just got done with the mock draft. If you have time to go look at James's mock draft, I of course used the consensus draft board from Brett Huff to create the draft board. I have
of colors. Lots of colors.
Yeah, it's brilliant though, isn't it? Like I love the colors in his his draft board. But it's cool because it kind of gives you a consensus of what everyone around the league, all of the mock drafts are kind of like putting guys in what order. I'll come up with a slightly different one that has more of my own views as we get a little bit closer. I don't know that I'm going to do all 30 teams again because that was like almost 7,000 words. And just the editing took like 5 hours for my wife, which is brutal. And there might be typos in there, but I don't blame her because she caught way more things than I caught on my like second, third look. There's a lot of intriguing players though that, for me, if there is a player that the Kings, like, they need a star, we know that, but they also need like a Herb Jones. Like, how do you find the Herb Jones in this draft? How do you find that guy who can be an elite role player, a role player that can actually fit in with what you're building, the 3-and-D guy, the guy with length, the guy that can play the 3-4? Is there anyone that stands out, or have you guys like taken a look at this and really dug in?
Well, I'll say this. I think the thing for me is for people to realize you use the Herb Jones. I'll even use Xavier Tillman, a guy who the Kings kind of had in their power and moved a couple years ago. Sometimes guys are products of their environment. There's a lot of luck that comes with it. Who's playing in front of you? Who's playing around you? At the end of the day, your talent's going to win out. I like to... I'm facetious when I say this because I think Luka Doncic would have been a star, but I think you might know Luka Doncic different in Sacramento than you would have in Dallas. Not to say they wouldn't have risen to the same heights, but I think the path would have been a little different. So guys can be products of their environment. If you're going to a Milwaukee and you've got this star-laden team with veterans all around you and you're a young player, playing time is going to be really bleak, and you have to find any way possible to edge out. And injuries become a factor and give you opportunity. G League will certainly be a part of that. How you find talent is there's no blueprint. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it, and you don't have nobody's a psychic or have a crystal ball. You don't know what's going to pan out, and the guy can play in one situation and look terrible, play in another situation and look great, and go into another situation and not play at all. So it's all what's surrounding you. There's reasons for why certain guys don't advance. Some of them are their own, and some of them are institutional. That just what's around them. So
you literally just described Derek Jones Jr.
I did. Derek Jones Jr. comes up every single offseason for the past 4 years in discussions. It's so much fun.
He has so much talent. He goes somewhere. It doesn't work out. He goes somewhere else. He doesn't play at all.
Yeah.
I'm still dreaming of Robert Woodard actually working out. It's the exact type of player the Kings need. A 3-and-D wing.
For who? Or like
no.
Maccabi
For Sacramento
Haifa?
in another world.
Maccabi. I'm confused. Who's
For
he going to work
Shanghai.
out for?
For Shanghai.
Yeah, the Sharks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that you just try, like, for the Kings, I mean, you think, like, mention Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. I don't know why there's others I can't think off the top of my head, but I kind of think you just go for exactly what De'Aaron Fox said at the end of his presser, just length and shooting.
Yeah.
And maybe more likely than not, you're not going to check both boxes of somebody that's been a really good three-point shooter and a really good defender at the college level. They're probably going to have done one or the other, and you're betting on improvement in one of the other aspects. And Jalen Williams is I don't have great research on these guys, but just kind of poked around a little bit with some of the guys that I think just are length and shooting. And I think Jalen Williams from Santa Clara stands out to me. Caught a little bit of him in kind of the Chet Holmgren research, and shoots almost 40% from three, has some off-the-dribble game, and he's one that needs to improve a little bit on the defensive end, but if he's not one of the main guys for that Santa Clara team, is he able to put more energy into the defensive end? Christian Braun is somebody that's seems to be rising up a lot. He's probably not there in the second round. I think he's projected late first, early second. Probably not. right?
Yeah, I mean Christian Brown, he reminds me of Dante DiVincenzo.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of that game, that the weird hustle that's effective. Yeah, one of those guys that like does a bunch of things on the court that never show up in the stat sheet, but you're like, huh, I like that he ran down that offensive rebound and did some good work. Yeah, it's going to be interesting though. I mean, they need a really really long 3-4 combo, and I mean, I don't think this is a draft to move back into the first round, if unless you really have to. But you know, I think, you know, and by that I mean like you want to move on from Rashawn Holmes, and it makes sense to move him for like a mid first round pick,
The 13 or 15 from Charlotte.
Yeah, that's kind of where I would be like, that's sort of being forced back into the draft. To a certain extent, but it also makes sense to get an asset there. And I don't know, I think that there's potential to find those guys around that spot. There are a couple of guys, you know, Sokan is interesting, you know, Baldwin is interesting. There's some guys that are at least intriguing to me. But it really is about like finding the right guy who has a right mindset and is willing to come in. And, you know, like I bring him up every pod and every time I'm on the radio, but like finding a Sadiq Bey is huge, right? But at the same time, like I brought this up on the radio, like Aaron Nesmith went before him, and he was the guy that you thought would be like this great scorer and shoot the lights out, never ever really developed at all. And then Bey like takes off and becomes like, when you look at, that's the gamble. That's the risk reward pick of a guy who averaged 20 something points a game versus another guy who's just really solid and you knew who he was, right?
And then Desmond Bane, a 4-year guy who doesn't have amazing measurables, goes 30th.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah,
there's no rhyme or reason, you know.
Yeah. Kyle Kuzma at 27. Pascal Siakam at 27. Rudy Gobert at 27, right?
Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, second round. Yeah, Chris Middleton.
Come on, stop it! Look what
you
did.
and Takeda.
Look
see
what
you
you
there.
did.
I see you there. But again, like Chris Middleton, if he doesn't fit the 3-and-D, I'm not sure. Like, who was he in college that you didn't think this is who he could have been? Well, everyone missed. Like, he's a second round pick. So, okay, so let's get to the business of basketball.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Okay, so Sean, you were in San Francisco. Well, no, Santa Clara.
Santa Clara, yeah.
Recently, and there's this weird situation with media and a player with the 49ers. What do you got for me? Like the Grant Cohen situation with Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah, so Javon Kinlaw he's the latest 49ers player in a long line that includes Jimmy Ward, Eric Armstead, among others, that took exception to this media member. And to be honest, it's been a thing. And if anybody doesn't know, Grant Cohn is, I think he does this, I don't know if it's a podcast or it's a blog, I'm not entirely sure, but it's called Quality Control for the 49ers. Now, Quality Control obviously harkens to there's quality control coaches in the league in the NFL for every NBA team. A lot of head coaches start as quality control to get their foot in the door. But that's his publication or whatever he ends up doing, YouTube channels. And so he's a publisher of all 49ers, part of Fan Nation on SI.com, and he has his own YouTube channel. So he's credentialed member of the media, and he was there for OTAs. I've had interactions before, you know, fine. I couldn't really say one way or the other. I don't really know him. I know his father. His father is Lowell Cohn, who's a longtime Bay Area journalist and has, you know, done a lot of basketball, baseball, football coverage out there. But Grant somehow becomes the apple of some of these guys' eyes because, but in a negative way. Some of these players have taken exception to him. And the most latest example at OTAs, which was day 2 of OTAs, but the first day that they actually had the media there. And Grant can be very, very critical of players, as most media members can be. But Javon Kinlaw, who's just been injury riddled, and the 49ers first round pick, from a couple years ago, and just hasn't really been able to stay on the field. And so Grant has teed off on him when it comes to being critical of him. And it didn't land well with not only Javon Kinlaw, some teammates, but also like family members and things like that. So apparently, and I didn't see this, he approached Grant on the field as media is coming out for OTAs to watch practice, and swatted at him and knocked his cap off his head, I guess. And then it escalated to when he's doing his YouTube show, as kind of like we're doing right now. I don't know if it was YouTube or if it's a Twitter account or what platform, but you can watch it. In fact, if you go to Eric Armstead's Twitter account, Eric not only teed off on Grant, but has the video, linked to the video in his tweet. And Javon crashed his live, and they brought him on, and Javon just didn't do himself any favors, in my opinion. It didn't look good. But both people, Javon Kinlaw and Grant Cohen, are to blame, in my opinion, because Grant Cohen escalated this himself. You can talk about how in the very beginning of in his show, he said, Javon Kinlaw made me famous. Grant Cohen, in my opinion, has more interest in being famous than he does in wanting to do the media gig, to do the job of what it is to be a media member, to tell stories, provide analysis, give context and depth. He did exactly what you're told not to do in Journalism 101, and that's become the story. And the minute Javon Kinlaw started going down a rabbit hole on this live, on his live, he should have probably ejected and immediately contacted the team. This thing should be sorted out behind closed doors. This is not something that you should bring attention to yourself. Now, I would hope Grant learns from it. I don't know. I know he's kind of a persona non grata among a lot of 49ers players throughout the year. So, but it's fun to bring up here in a Kings Beat platform, because we've talked about interactions with both positive and negatively with a lot of players over the year, and I think the ones that always comes to mind is DeMarcus Cousins, because he was so polarizing and just kind of a different way. But he's certainly not the only one that has had negative fan or media and player interactions over the years, and I think that's why we're bringing it up on the business of basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting topic. I mean, we can kind of look at like a positive moment. Well, what started out as slightly negative and turned positive for Brenden, right? Like you had your situation with where you asked Luke a question early in the season about hiding Tyrese Halliburton on the defensive end, and then Ty sort of had this like fun, witty banter, but it never got to a point where it was like contentious. It was always more fun and lighthearted. But you could see that if you like staked your claim to that you think that Halliburton is the worst defender you've ever seen, and you spent like a couple of weeks or a couple of podcasts or wrote about it 5 or 6 times about how bad he was as a defensive player, how you could start to like see things turn a little south. But I think that's a little bit. What did you learn from that, Brenden? Because I've had an incident, which I'll talk about in a minute. But no, I mean,
what did you learn?
No, because I think what you learned is that sometimes extending yourself and being part of the joke is okay, and it helps you along the way. It helps you ingratiates you to the player.
Yeah, I mean, I think the primary, the basic answer would be that no player or no coach is going to throw their player under the bus like that. But outside of what I learned in asking questions, I think just interacting with players, but it's really just people in general. Don't really need to use the word players in my mind. It's just each person that you interact with is going to go about things differently. Maybe a different player would have felt a type of way about it and reacted in a different way, rather than Tyrese and I kind of going back and forth a little bit in, like you said, a lighthearted way. So I think it's just being careful with wording. And yeah, I think part of the reason it was okay was that, they were hiding Tyrese. Like he had struggled on the defensive end, and he knew that, and I acknowledged when he had good defensive games, like some 4 or 5 steal games and things like this. So, not like you're saying, just completely making that my entire personality for the year is like, oh, now I'm known as the guy that hates Tyrese on the defensive end, so I have to keep sticking with this. And even when he has good defensive plays, I'm going to post the clip where he did fall asleep or things like this. So it's it's interesting to me with the Niners situation. I already had kind of like seen that Grant didn't have a great reputation around the fan base and things like that.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah. And I just think, I think obviously I'm newer to this, and we witnessed this like once or twice throughout the King season as well. It's like frustrating to me because it just gives media a bad look. Like I feel like a lot of people already shine media, look at media in a bad light, and it's just it's so typical, like playing into the stereotype of, like you're saying, the media guys are the ones that are looking to make themselves the story, and get their 15 minutes, and it's just like people are going to overgeneralize and just say, oh well, this is just what media does.
Sean, have you ever come close to getting physical with a player?
No, never.
Have you ever had a player approach you and like
I had
an angry way?
Oh yeah, several times, but never to where it went like that. I mean, I think I used an example with DeMarcus about the Derrick Rose tweet that some people thought he was taking a shot at Derrick Rose. He was being funny. For people who don't remember, he was he turned his ankle in a game. They came back and win, talking to him, and then afterwards, as we're kind of pulling away, everyone's kind of done. I go, oh yeah, by the way, how's the ankle? And he goes, that's fine. And then he goes, actually no, I think I'm thinking to sit out the rest of the year and get my own comeback commercial. And he was poking fun at just, RG3, Robert Griffin III had a comeback commercial, Derrick Rose. All these shoe companies were doing these commercials for a lot of these guys coming back from injuries and stuff. And DeMarcus, who at the time famously didn't really have a shoe contract at the moment, he kind of poked fun at it. It wasn't poking fun at any one player, but a lot of people thought that was a shot at Derrick Rose. And I woke up to a series of text messages. He was very upset about it. And I said, DeMarcus, you were being funny. Like, you shouldn't have to explain yourself for being funny. We had a little bit of a disagreement over whether or not I should have reported that or what he said. And I said, so in my tweets, I never apologized. I never said, no, it's just a difference of opinion. You're still in an open media locker room session. There's no, I was still asking you questions. But the best part about it was, I said, it's not as fun. In a series of tweets, I said, if anyone thought that DeMarcus was taking a shot at Derrick Rose, like, I'm using RG3 as a situation. I'm using these examples. I said, I guess it's not as funny when you have to explain the joke. He retweeted all of them, and then I was like, okay, I don't know what type of player I'm going to run into tonight at the game because, it's fresh off of, it's too fresh. We're coming right off of this. And everything was fine. I've had other moments. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who used to think Paul Westphal probably hated me. And maybe he did, I don't know, but I don't think so. He and I always got along great. I didn't have the relationship like James did. James and Paul were very close, but I was in a situation when I in media where I think he thought at the time that maybe I was somebody else at a radio station I worked at. And to that point, like, I always ask the first question right there, and it could be tough. I mean, especially at a time where he knows I know a lot of the players that he didn't have the best relationships with, and also the team just wasn't any damn good. So a lot of that just kind of stacks up, and you're asking a guy a tough question right after a game. And I don't think that any of my questions were necessarily too tough. I think they were a little bit straightforward. But I think Paul was calculated in the way he would react to some questions, and I think he was calculated in the way he wanted to reply to something to make it seem as if he was addressing a bigger topic than he is. So again, Paul and I were fine. I didn't have any moments, and I know James, I always like to give James grief because George Karl famously called him an asshole one time, and I thought that was amazing. And even George Karl and I, it's not hard to find out I'm a Duke fan. but I wore a Duke shirt in front of him at one point, and I did it on purpose. Usually I purposefully wouldn't do it when I was wearing it around him, like if there was going to be a game, because just, I'm not going to do that. But I had to come from a function where I wasn't able to change my shirt, and I'm like, well, I'm going to wear this. I've done it around several players before. Harrison Barnes knows, he's a North Carolina guy. We get along great. It's no problem. But I know Duke is a 4-letter word literally to George Karl. So for different reasons or another, I remember, seeing Rich Gannon and a coworker I had at a radio station get into it with the Raiders. It was very contentious. A lot of that stuff I feel has to stay behind the scenes. I remember when the famous now moment with Andy Ferrillo and DeMarcus Cousins, when they when that thing started happening, people who don't know, I take a camera into the locker room. I'm a one-man band usually, and I put the camera on the ground, because that's stuff that doesn't that the fans and people who watch and the NBA and love these players and all that stuff, they don't really need to know that stuff. It's not stuff that happens unless it crosses a line where it becomes a physical altercation. That's different. So I always put the camera on the ground to let it know that I don't give a shit about this. This isn't anything that any of us, that anybody outside this locker room should know. It doesn't impact the play on the court, any of that stuff. So it's not the last time an athlete's going to have an altercation with a media member. This one certainly wasn't the first, but again, you cannot make yourself the story, and you have to do better as a media member. And I don't know that what Grant, to bring it back to the Grant Cohen moment, I don't know that what he's done is valid enough to have his credential revoked. I don't cover the 49ers like I do the Kings regularly, but it's certainly the latest in a long line of events that have happened.
Yeah. I've only had one incident where I had like a player, me and a player got into it. And it was a weird situation. I talked about a play on the court and a mistake that a veteran player made in a game that cost his team a win, and a mistake that was a flagrant foul at an inappropriate time in a game. And that player waited a couple of days, like almost a week.
Which is impressive when you think about it, because they held on to it that long. That's pretty wild.
They had interviewed, we'd had him at practice, we had him after a game. He waited until pregame when media relations stepped out of the room for 2 seconds and went at me and like got pretty offensive. And I like walked over closer so we could have a conversation and did the whole, are you going to step to me thing and all that. And it was like, whatever, man. I'm going to say what I'm going to say on TV. And he had his piece and I said mine right back. And it was not a good scene. There was only one other player in the room and was sitting there like quietly watching, like, oh my goodness, this is not good. I'm not going to throw someone under the bus, but
I wish I had seen this.
But I, to be honest, like my view of that player changed dramatically. Like, and my opinion of that person, like they can't take it back, because I didn't say anything that was outside the realm of basketball and wasn't, like completely honest and truthful at the time. And he didn't like it and chose a really, really interesting time to like have his moment where he was going to tell me he didn't like it. And I was like, all right, and I didn't go write about it or podcast about it and make it a big deal at the time, because that would have been making me the story and not, it all worked out the way it should have worked out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, these people are human at the end of the day, and they're gonna have certain people have thicker skin than others, and
yeah,
I think the best part about it is, especially now as we're hopefully stepping out of this chaos that was the pandemic and more back to doing the job the right way. Somebody who can say something on the record, like I am now in front of a microphone, I'm articulating it in a way that maybe I would articulate it different 6 hours from now to a buddy of mine replaying this conversation. Mm-hmm. And the context would be a little bit different. The intent and purpose of what I'm saying would be a little bit different. the same thing goes for anybody who has to do this for a living. The job is to, the job isn't just playing basketball. The job is also speaking to the media. It's part of the gig. And I think having the ability to pull someone aside and have a conversation like adults and just human to human is great. That's what you need. Some people, even in professional sports, they're going to be immature. They've got a lot of money. Some people that think that'll make them untouchable, and it's not. There's so many stories of caution that'll come along the way that you can point to. But I feel like most people kind of get it by now, and someone like Javon Kinlaw, who, with everything he's been through, and you talk about how mental health comes a part of this. I mean, this is a guy who, as Grant Cohn even said, hey, if you want to shut me up, do so on the field. Stay on the field and do something great, and I'll be happy to sing your praises. Criticism just comes along with it. You got to call a spade when at the end of the day, or else you're not doing your job. And I think there's a way to do it in a tactful and in a good way. But if you're, as I pointed to earlier, if your whole outset is being famous over doing a job, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. And
wrong, yeah.
Show
up every day, do the work.
Right.
Grind.
Just be there. It's one thing for somebody to be able to say, and I'll bring Brenden into this as well, because Brenden wasn't there for Tyrese's rookie season, as far as I remember. Sorry, Brenden, if you were. But we was also, it was a lot of we were in Zoom at that time, right? It floored me that we went a whole season, and the first time I get to meet Tyrese Halliburton is in Vegas at summer league for a summer league where he's barely a part of it. He's just with the team in training. This is Davion Mitchell's rookie season, and my first time meeting Tyrese Halliburton in person is in Las Vegas for summer league. So
training camp for me.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It's interesting that way, and he asks. Brenden gets to ask a question to Luke, and Tyrese hasn't seen this guy. So I think Tyrese had the maturity enough to use what you say as motivation, also hold himself accountable, and also have some fun with you, and also in like a ribbing. It probably started off in a very F you type of way, but I'm going to do it in a nice way, and it just evolved into something that was actually kind of fun. And I look forward to. I was encouraging. I was like, this is phenomenal. This was for my own mirth. I found amusement out of it, and was so happy that it happened. And again, I think if Tyrese Halliburton saw you, for people who don't know, he'd put his arm around you and be like, "Hey, man, good to see you." So I think that's a good acknowledgement of what you do.
And actually, Brenden, I'll tell you this too. You somehow broke down a wall without being in a locker room, with most of your interaction being via Zoom. And so that's a good thing. I mean, because even when he walks in the room, when players walk in the room, just so people know, we're 20 feet from the stage. Even after our post game, they come out of a door, walk right up a staircase.
It feels like 100 feet away.
Yeah.
You're way in the back, Sean.
Yeah. They come in a door, they walk up a staircase that's literally right by the door and walk right onto the set. And that's where their stage is. So they come in and then they walk right back out. That's not the way it's always been. Like, we're usually in the locker room surrounding, standing over in a corner while guys are getting dressed, and then zooming around them and like basically cornering them in their locker stall. Like, there's a weird like intimacy to the way that we cover players, but it's not there anymore. Because of the pandemic and the way that we have to cover them now. So I'm hoping that we do get back to some of that. But at the same time, I thought it was a good moment for you, Brenden, because you were able to break down a wall even without having the luxury of being around somebody.
Yeah. The little walk either to the stand or off of the stand back into their hallway towards the locker room is probably where some of the best moments happen. Random things like Gentry saying that he's going to go drink, which
Harrison Barnes asked us a question that one time. What was that like?
If Boogie should get his jersey retired.
If Boogie, yeah.
Yeah. He also said that him and Josh Jackson had a bet, or no, I asked if they had a bet on the UNC Kansas game, and he said whatever Josh Jackson wants to lose.
Oh.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, right.
It did not.
Did not.
Yeah.
Did not.
So sweet. All right. Well, this is good stuff because I think it's about like pulling back the curtain a little bit and letting everyone see and hear some of the other things that we go through when we're doing this gig. And it's always good because, you know, like Sean's been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this. This will be year 13. Brendan's entering like second season. So you get perspectives from all kinds of angles where, you know, maybe even like I'm a little enviable a lot of times because Brendan has a fresh look at things that like Sean and I just can't have.
Well, to that point, I'm glad you mentioned that because it reminds Brendan, how old, not to put you on blast, but how old were you in your first season?
24.
Okay. See, I was even younger than you when I did this. And I'll say this, even though I started at a time covering the Kings, so the 01-02 season was my first experience with the Kings. My first full season was the next year. So they're, Western Conference Finals, all that stuff. I got the last half of that season, and even then I had to miss a handful of games because of my board hopping duties back at KHTK. So it was a little bit different. But what I'm getting at is, even for as good as that team was, you'd constantly see media members having issues with certain people. And even for me being this, I looked like a kid, man. You look like a kid now. You look like you're 14 on this podcast right now talking to us. I'm just messing with you. But I really looked like a kid at that point, And so I'm in this locker room, easily the youngest person in that locker room, that maybe isn't a player who just got drafted. And there were certain guys that weren't necessarily the most warm and inviting to me, even if I'd ask questions. And I'm sure I asked just awful questions. I still do, but an awful question can get a brilliant response. So I was just never scared to do it, So I think that can play a part of it as well, when maybe certain people are used to seeing a media member looking a little bit more seasoned, like the fine gentleman James Ham and myself are now. As opposed to someone who's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and brand new and look like that the ball boys are out there. Like you can go join the equipment staff. That's where you're at. That's just that to me, I think can play a factor as well when somebody looks like they're brand new on the scene, not knowing what they're doing, and just trying to feel it out.
Yeah. I came into it a little bit thinking that, okay, I'm going to be the young guy in the room, and this team is kind of at the top, some young guys that are going to be my age. Like, I am a year younger than De'Aaron Fox. Tyrese has 2 years younger than me. So I was like, to me, I can try to be relatable to these guys. Like, they haven't seen There's Something About Mary either, I bet. At least one of them hasn't.
I'll tell you
one.
There's potential, if it's not this year, it will be next year, that I will have a son that's older than the draft pick.
Oh.
Because my son is 19. There's a possibility that the Kings draft a player that's older than my son. I mean,
Brendan,
that's younger than, yeah.
So it gets weird when you have a head coach, when you're older than the head coach. And fortunately, I think Luke still had me beat, which is great. So I don't think that I
was older than Luke.
I have to look that up, but I'm just so glad that Mike Brown is the head coach because he's older than me. So that's not going to be a situation. But since you brought up something about Mary, Brendan,
yeah, we got to round this thing out. But let's go. I think
we need your review now because you have finished this movie. Yes,
I have.
How long?
I have. I will. It only took me like 2 weeks.
Jesus Christ! You watched in 15-minute increments, right?
Do you even know who Brett Favre is?
I do. I will never wear hair gel again in my life.
There it is.
Oh, that wasn't hair gel.
There was a lot of turns. I will admit I turned it off at the wrong time because it got really good right after. There's just like twists all the time. Yeah.
Favorite character?
Probably the guy that ended up being the pizza delivery guy, because I just didn't see that one coming at all. That one totally caught me off guard.
The right answer was Matt Dillon. I'm sorry.
The guy who broke his legs so he could be close to her.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it threw me through a loop a lot at the end. I liked all the plot twists for sure.
All right.
Next time, okay, I think we have to add a requirement for Brendan's homework assignment. So next time you watch a movie, it must be in one sitting. We're not asking that much.
No, you're not. You're not. What is? I did just finish the first Ozark season, so those last 3 episodes I had to binge. I'm not gonna lie. So
The first
they're
season?
not in the way.
Oh.
Yes, actually, just finished the first season. I had seen the first this is kind of on theme. I had seen the first 6 or 7 episodes years ago, but then for some reason just put it down and didn't finish it. So I had to start up again from the beginning of season 1. But I was kind of obsessed with the end of that, so it got in my way of finishing There's Something About Mary. What is next up for me? You guys have to watch Chip and Dale, by the way.
Oh, the Rescue Rangers.
Yeah.
I'll probably watch it because my 14-year-old will watch it.
Not actually.
That's
I'll
another
figure
one.
out a real movie for you guys.
That's another movie you have to be careful when you look up on the internet. I say your next movie that you have to watch, and again, I've been saying it for a while, is Swingers.
Swingers.
Again,
Yeah.
Vince Vaughn, Jon Favreau. Make sure you're watching that version and not because this one will be very
Not
different.
the Triple X version.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just making sure. I'm just
Trying to
making
be
sure
a friend.
Just making sure that your that your search history is intact.
Incognito
yeah,
to look up this movie.
Wow. See, I don't even use incognito windows. I don't know about this culture.
I'll help you out.
All right. Yeah.
Somebody in Kingspedia that needs.
I don't know what else. I'll go upstairs. I'll find some
Well,
movies that I would
actually,
recommend.
because wasn't it your friends at King's Herald who said that you
Tarantino
haven't
movies.
seen any Tarantino movies, and I think your reply was what?
I've seen parts of 3 of them.
How do you see parts of
Okay,
movies,
I
man?
think you have to start they're not going to tell you. You don't start with Pulp Fiction. You start with
Reservoir
4
Dogs.
rooms. No.
Oh, okay. I see what you're doing.
You start with 4 rooms because it gives you a taste of the different angles of him.
Do I watch each room at a different portion?
sitting? No.
Yeah, different
no.
sitting.
No, you have to watch that, and then Reservoir Dogs is incredible. Yeah, and then
Well-
it gets lighter and more bloody.
Are we telling him to watch the Tarantino anthology? You have to watch everything? That's interesting. Okay. I'm good
Maybe.
with that.
Okay.
Those are some longer movies, too. They get kind of longer, so
It's tough. It's
buckle
tough.
up, buddy. One sitting.
Buckle up, buckle
So wait, what is the official answer for next up? I feel like it has to be Swingers. It has been for a little while.
Okay, I can go with that.
Okay.
I mean, that's really it's Jon Favreau, young Jon Favreau and young Vince Vaughn. Yeah, before Favreau becomes the filmmaker that he is now.
Don't be the PG-13 guy. Don't be the PG-13 guy.
Yeah, I think it's about people it's about kind of seeing where you fit in society, right? A little bit. Yeah. So all right,
It's about relationships, all that stuff. It's good stuff.
It is good stuff. All right, we've got the happy hour coming up in not that long. I've got to get this thing edited and put up, and then the happy hours tonight. If you are a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat, and you want to, you need to jump on board, and you'll get to the happy hour tonight with Gary Gerald. If you're not a premium subscriber and you decide at the last minute, I've got to get to the happy hour tonight, make sure that when you get the email that says you're now a premium subscriber, respond back to that and make sure that I'll see it if it respond back and say, hey, I didn't get the link. Can you make sure I get the link to the happy hour? Happy hours are absolutely a blast. I can't wait to have Gary Gerald hanging out and talking Kings basketball. He's just such a great storyteller. And I'm excited to have fans ask questions. I think that'll be good stuff. Hopefully Sean and Brenden will join me in the happy hour, and we'll just kind of pepper them with questions nonstop.
I will be there. G-Man is a legend. The sheets that he has are how I imagine Mike Brown's defensive game plans look.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know what? I might ask him to pull out one of those sheets so he has it and can show it at the happy hour. It's impressive. And then to see the Gary Gerald broadcasting tree where Scott Marsh and Jason Ross, all these guys actually emulate what he does is fun to watch as well. He is a legend. So that's from 5:30 to 7:30 tonight, Thursday, May 26th. again, premium subscribers to the Kings Beat. Outside of that, thanks Brenden and Sean for joining us on this venture today. We were supposed to make this one shorter, and it didn't work out.
This
We
is
failed.
shorter.
We failed. Yeah, but we did have to get to movie talk with Brenden. Outside of that, be safe out there. It's starting to heat up. I can't wait to be on.
Oh,
the
I
lake
thought
this
you were
weekend.
talking to me at Bottle Rock. Be safe at Bottle Rock.
Oh,
I will.
Oh.
I'll be safe.
Yeah,
you'll be safe out there.
Sean.
Oh yeah, and be safe, Sean. Like, don't do anything crazy or
No,
do
never
things
do.
crazy, but be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bottle Rock. Oh, it's
Cannot wait.
good stuff.
Cannot wait.
I can't wait to get out on the lake. It's going to be nice and warm, and hopefully the water's heated up this weekend. And
Don't lose your phone.
Leave your phone at home.
well, that and I can't hit my head. That's what they like. Don't hit your head because I'm still on blood thinners for another 30 days.
Escalated
Oh,
quickly.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Whew.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. For Sean Cunningham from Fox 40 and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Herald and the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We will see you next week.